Hello, and welcome to the Simply Business Interview Podcast, a podcast created by business owners for business owners. I am your host, John Jennings. And I believe that most business owners are working way too hard for much too little. And one of our issues is that we overcomplexify things. I believe the answers are almost always within us or within our reach. I like to say that I'm a simple man with simple ideas. So welcome to Simply Business. All right, I am really super thrilled today. I'm excited to have this conversation. I have a lot of great guests, young and old, but I'm kind of, I guess, a fanboy of this guy. I've heard him speak several times. He is one of the most impactful people on the Louisville community. He's no stranger to anybody here in Louisville, but I'm thrilled to introduce Gill Holland. And Gill, I know you're a man of many hats, so I'm not going to try to give you a title. Why don't you kind of introduce yourself for my guest?
You're starting with the hardest question. Anyway, so I do a bunch of things, all related, I think, to trying to discover, nurture, and enhance people and property. So whether it's film producing and you find a script and you try to make it into the best movie you can and find the best actors that you can and work with them and get them to where they need to be and can be for self-actualization, whether it be musicians on the record label, whether it be old buildings that need some love, that can be, if you think about the Green Building, and it was boarded up when we got it, and now it's the greenest commercial structure in the state of Kentucky, or even neighborhoods which maybe need some revitalization and maybe better branding and more diversity of tenants and homeowners, and or if it's neighborhoods like Harlan County, areas that need to be Kentucky's go-to Appalachian tourist destination, which Harlan County should be it, and we need to break down the urban-rural divide. Or it's just working with young artists or local folk artists or outsider artists, and so we just opened the Outsider Art Museum. So it's all about just seeing possibility and trying to leverage whatever skills, assets, connections I have to make things bigger and better.
Yeah, you're so humble in how you how you come across. For those who are familiar with Louisville, the NuLu area was, I guess, that was one of your first big projects, at least on that scale, right? What motivated you to say, wow, we could maybe take this kind of rundown part of town, Butcher Town, and not necessarily the most attractive and best smelling part of our city, and we can turn this into a great high tech district, and it's just amazing what's there now. So what drove you? What made you think that was even a possibility?
Yeah, it is. I moved to Louisville in 2005, and there was not a lot of activity on East Market Street. Wayside Christian Mission had 12 of the buildings, and but there was a scrappy neighborhood association that Bill Marzian and Rick Murphy, and there was some good folks that had saved some of the buildings, and then many of the old buildings had fallen down by either neglect, mainly, probably, and I had been living in the Village in New York City, and Greenwich Village is the same kind of architectural decade of buildings, 1850 to 1890, and so for me, that area of town really felt like New York, and I was like, all these old buildings are so cool, like this, the streets are extra wide there because there was that Olmsted Park in the middle of the 800 block of East Market,
right
in front of where Place NECU is. So, and I started doing history and research. I was like, let's put back the Olmsted Park, which the streetscape that's underway right now is actually came out of the research that I did on this Olmsted Park. And they were realizing, like, we're not going to put the park in the middle because, that was made before there was cars. And the park actually had been torn out for the streetcars.
Oh, wow.
But the idea of a more sustainable, walkable slower traffic, safer pedestrian experience. You know, I just kept thinking like, we could do this here. You know, New York, I couldn't have afforded to, much less buy a tiny apartment, but you know, you could buy an entire building for $400,000 in a urban growing city that's so super cool town. Like, wow, everything seemed doable.
Yeah.
And then also I was like thinking like it kind of needed a brand, because you know, you did have Butchertown, but Butchertown's kind of north of NuLu, and then you do have Phoenix Hill, which is kind of going up towards, you know, Baxter Ave. And I was like, well, it's kind of, you know, and my friends from New York would come and they'd be like, Louisville's kind of like the East Village was in the, you know, early 90s. Like, and I would say like, yeah, we need a New York Louisville bridge, because if I can get you guys here, you're going to move here and you love it. And then so NuLu, actually everybody says New Louisville. It's abbreviation of New York Louisville.
Oh, really?
It was the village, it was the New York, it was the village. So I was like, New York Louisville, make the bridge, combine it, and that's
I love it. That is I feel like we just had a huge discovery. This is like, oh, breaking news. You know, NuLu is not what you thought.
Even on the NuLu.org website, it just says New Louisville, and it's too complicated to actually explain the origin. But yeah, I did invent the word, and then I worked with like Jason Pierce and some other folks and on the branding and the design, and you know, there were some smart artists that really helped in the early days.
Yeah, that's cool. I learned something. That's awesome. And I'm in NuLu probably 3 or 4 times a week. And, you know, it's just, I have several clients down there and I'm just through there and I eat there and go to, you know, go after work there. I mean, it's just such a great part of town. I love it. Love it. And so you went on and you went to the Portland area and have worked there. And then the last time I saw you speak a couple of years ago, you told us about Harlan County and your passion there. So let's flip it over to the Appalachian side of the state and what is, again, the inspiration and what's going on there.
Well, again, just the you know, so I feel like the last 12 years in Portland, I've been trying to address the 9th Street divide in Louisville and the, you know, economic racial kind of segregation that our city suffers under for various reasons, whether it's the Great Flood or the redlining or the you know,
it's a lot of history, a lot of baggage, right?
Yeah, there's government mandated urban renewal, and there was also natural disasters. But you know, you recognize what caused the schism, and then okay, how are we going to address it? So we've been kind of addressing that. So that was like the last 10, 12 years of my life. And then just like in NuLu, after like 8 years, 7 years in NuLu, I kind of realized like I could get hit by a bus and NuLu is on its way. Like NuLu does not need me anymore. I did the, you know, I came in impactfully, positively, building a crew, lots of folks in the neighborhood, all kind of working together, you know, lots of us working together. So I was like, great, I don't have to be here anymore. Let me go do something with my short life on this planet Earth where I can have more impact for, again, the skills and, you know, whatever I can bring to the table. So Portland, I've been doing the last 12 years. It's going great. It's a much bigger neighborhood. It's totally different. But, you know, we have 30,000+ families on the affordable housing wait list. We have lots of empty, vacant, abandoned shotgun houses in Portland. So we've been, you know, fixing them up. We've been taking empty lots, building, you know, affordable housing on empty lots, bringing more people to the area. It's actually more racially diverse now than it was when we started.
Yeah.
And then,
I was just talking with a client that serves that area, and they were filling me in on how racially diverse that area is. I mean, it's not just a white black thing. It's across the spectrum. Incredibly, probably the most diverse community in the Louisville area, I would think.
Newburgh, you know, Beachmont, you know, we have some nice pockets of diversity, but anyway. And Portland, you know, it's got the great history, you know, so I hired Jim Higdon to do a history of the Portland neighborhood, and the stories are fascinating, and, you know, over half the buildings are over 100 years old. So all this great history. And then traveling the state a couple years ago, I just started realizing like Kentucky has never, you have these other states, whether it's Gatlinburg in Tennessee or, Blackberry Farm, or then you have the Greenbrier, you have like destination Appalachian tourist places in these other states. And if you say Appalachia, we don't really have a go-to tourism destination in Kentucky's Appalachia. And we have a beautiful, temperate rainforest, some original growth, high land. We're going to be a climate refugee outpost. We have lots of fresh water. So I was like, Harlan County should be it. There's so much history. And then, my granddad was the doctor for U.S. Steel up in Lynch. And then my dad was born in 1936 when he was working in Lynch, and then he got called up to World War II. So, my family basically left Harlan in like 1940 or 41. I haven't actually figured out the exact date that he got called up to serve. But, it's a courthouse square town. It's got the highest mountain. It's got 3 state parks. It's the headwaters of the Cumberland River. If you think about Nashville and country music, like I would argue that Nashville's country music starts in Harlan County, because that's where the headwaters of the river are. And if you think about all the country songs that talk about Harlan, I kind of joke, but it's not much of a joke. It's like the most famous county in America. The movie Harlan County, USA won the Oscar in the late 70s. So I think there's so much potential, lots of old buildings, lots of great, smart, nice folk. And I'm totally jazzed.
So you've got a brewery going there. What are some of the other attractions you got going that
Yeah, well, so the one thing, so Harlan County Beer Company, first of all, I just thought it sounded really good. Harlan County Beer Company, it just sounds so good. And then one of my friends in the Portland neighborhood, Danny Syme, who's the head of the Ahoy Project, which is the Children's Experience Museum, which has a groundbreaking October 2024, which is next month, but I'll say October 2024 in case somebody's watching this 5 years from now. I said, Danny, I have this idea to do like a microbrewery, brew pub restaurant in Harlan County. I want to call it Harlan County Beer Company. Do me a design, right? Because I knew how important the early NuLu design work was, working with some of these graphic designers. And so he made me a logo for Harlan County Beer Company, and he sent it to me. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Now I really have to do this business. This is the last thing I have time to do as another business, but I have to do it. And so, you can't do anything by yourself. So first thing I did was I sent it to Jeff Marietta, who is an amazing entrepreneur leader in Appalachia. And I said, Jeff, you now own 50% of the Harlan County Beer Company. And I sent him the logo, and he like calls me. He's like, what are we doing? And then we started talking. He's like, well, there's this great building right on the courthouse square in Harlan. And I was like, well, let's buy it. So, we raised a bunch of money on WeFunder, which is a crowdfunding investment platform. So $100 increments, and we raised about $250,000, and then we put in, a bunch of money ourselves, and we now have, I think we have more employees now than there are coal miners working in Harlan County. And
Really?
Harlan County is literally the county that built the United States, and created the energy to make the tanks that won World War II. So like we have got to diversify these former coal town economies.
Yeah.
There's been huge sacrifices made by those folk.
Yeah. And my in-laws are from that side of the state, and it's beautiful country. It's actually, and just so much going for it. And so many people just don't even go there because they're either afraid or they just assume, everything is, mobile homes on concrete blocks, which is plenty of that, of course, but there's so much more it has to offer.
We have that in Louisville too. So
true.
Yeah. And I joke, people are like, well, it's hard to get to. I'm like, well, that's one of our logos, conveniently located 1 hour off the freeway. Like, make that a positive.
Yeah. Well, my son has recently moved to North Carolina, and that's like, one of the paths, fastest paths to get there is actually going right through Harlan. So
Well,
I've
and I grew up in North Carolina, and for example, I saw how Asheville has, blown up over the last 3 decades.
yeah.
And Asheville, up until last year, had more microbreweries in that one
Oh
town
yeah.
than in the entire state of Kentucky. So,
Yeah. I mean, that's
like,
a
wait,
great foodie town and microbrewery
yeah,
town. Yeah. We've done that trip before too.
yeah.
That's cool. So much you're doing. Let me kind of flip the coin on you a little bit. So you've done these amazing projects, but I'm sure you were spending a lot of time like beating your head against the wall with the system, if you will. What was the biggest frustration you had to overcome? And because you've obviously hit some big ones.
Yeah, I mean, uh, I have, either I'm just such an optimist that I refuse to pay attention to all the obstacles that would maybe cripple somebody else. I just feel like there's a way around or over or under. So I don't feel like I've ever not been able to accomplish anything based on any kind of bureaucratic type stuff. I do think changing people's perceptions of areas, that just takes a long time, because especially if you're talking about like West Louisville, since the Great Flood of 37, there's been just lots of negative stories when folks can't control the narrative in the media. And then there's that vicious cycle that keeps going. So it's like, how do you work with local nonprofits, artists, churches, whoever it is, and get positive stories into the media every month about something good happening in the Portland neighborhood, which we literally tried to place stories for all these, whether they were residents or just other friends that we're working with, or, the Portland Museum or the neighborhood house or the table where I had lunch today.
Oh,
So
great place. Yeah.
changing the narrative, and it just takes time. So there's a little bit of a patience angle, and there's also like, you got to realize, like, like there's the cliche about the guy building, like, the Sistine Chapel in 1400. One guy's like, well, I'm just laying bricks every day,
Yeah.
so boring. And another guy's like, I'm building a chapel that people are going to look at for thousands of years.
Right.
How do you go brick by brick, block by block, and appreciate the process and not just the end product?
Yeah. That's great. Great thought. And that's a great story too. But that anything worthwhile takes time, right?
And there's plateaus. I always feel like you get like the rush, and it's same with the movie business. It's like going to the premiere with your movie is so fun. First day of shooting, so fun. Seeing the first cut, so fun. And in between, lots of just boring, not fun, slog. You get to the location, like, one movie, we got to the location where we were supposed to shoot that day, it had burned down. Like, so then it's like, I got, 60 people, we got to go we got to shoot, we got to make our day. Like, time is money on a film set. We only have the camera, the crew, the cast for this amount of time. What are we going to shoot now? It's problem solving all the time. And then, there's the 8 to 12 weeks of editing a movie, and it's, you and the editor and the director, and in a room, and you're going over the same footage over and over, like what works, what doesn't.
Right.
So there's
It's not near the same scale, but I wrote a book, and that writing of the first draft was fun. And then, my son was my editor. He's that's what he does. He does communications and writing as a profession. And so he was a great editor, but it came back with all these red marks, and writing it, I would say writing it the second time was not very fun. And it took longer, I think, to write it the second time than to write the first time.
Well, they always say, the more time you have, the shorter it'll be.
Yeah.
And better.
Yeah.
And I always say, all killer, no filler. Like, let's cut all the fat. Like, and if you don't have enough time, usually you throw in too much stuff, and then you're missing part of the message.
I tell you, every time I've heard you speak, it's always been about the community development stuff. Talk a little bit about the movie and music industry. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't know for many years that you were even involved with that stuff. I just thought you were some kind
Yeah,
of
it's funny. Like, I'm going up to New York tomorrow for the week. In New York, nobody knows that I do real estate or community development or Appalachian, or I mean, some of them are starting to know about the outsider art stuff. But yeah, New York, everybody just knows me as a music film guy.
Yeah.
Here, most people don't know that that's just as much of a passion as everything else I do. So yeah, but music and film is not necessarily a good business. It's working in the arts, and you're trying to monetize the arts, and you have, they call it a hits business because you have to have a hit every now and then to pay for whatever investments you're making, signing folks, and some artists get lucky and other artists are equally talented and just for whatever reason never get the break. And then there's other, and in the old days it was much easier for musicians to be working musicians and get paid, but now with the Spotify's of the world, which are amazing when you get lucky and go viral.
Oh yeah.
But you can't sell any CDs anymore. So it's actually been more challenging for the non-viral going artist who still wants to be a journeyman musician professionally.
Yeah. And I guess it's got what really has pushed a lot more concerts now than there used to be, because that's how they have to make money now. They can't make money.
It's also going back to the way music started with somebody singing around a fire, and now they're singing in a concert, and that's you can access the music anywhere and you can know about it. And so the artist now gets to have a fan base in Toledo, even though maybe they've never been to Toledo before. But yeah, that since there's music everywhere, the music that is special is the live interaction today.
So what would we recognize from your portfolio, either on the movie or music side? What's been one of your hits?
I mean, so I've done lots and lots of movies. I was lucky to produce the first film that ever won 3 prizes at the Sundance Film Festival, called Hurricane Streets. And I'm mainly well known for working with people who are presently kind of unknown, and then they become very famous. So, for example, in Hurricane Streets, Edie Falco played the mom, and Edie Falco was a great New York actress, but I think we paid her $100 a day, and and then of course the guys doing The Sopranos saw our movie and then cast her in The Sopranos, and now she's a huge. And then the second film had an unknown teenager named Kate Hudson, and then she got then Cameron Crowe saw that and cast her in Almost Famous, and she got nominated for an Oscar. And then and I have tons and tons of stories like that, which is just kind of getting lucky, and also maybe having a decent eye for talent with our casting directors and directors. So yeah, super fun. And then I've done, kind of documentaries that, I did one called Flow for Love of Water, all about globalization and privatization of water, which I kind of think is one reason maybe I live in Kentucky, because we have so much fresh water. Back to being a state, like if everything goes south, we have the Ohio River, and we have the third most naturally occurring streams and waterways in our state of the entire country. So there's a good reason to be here. We got 78,000, family farms. I feel like Kentucky is a good place to be.
Yeah, Kentucky's a pretty good place to live. What brought you back here?
Well, my wife is from here, and we met at a wedding in North Carolina, but it turned out we were living like 3 blocks apart in New York City. So, yeah. And so when we started dating, I started, and I'd been to Louisville once as like in like 4th grade. We were family road trip across America, and Louisville was 8 hours from Davidson, North Carolina. And so we stayed with some friends off of Soulgrave, and they were also, my parents are teachers, and the family was teachers. We stayed with them and then drove out to California, and I just remember like, wow, that was my only memory. That's the only thing I knew about Louisville. I didn't even know Muhammad Ali was from here originally. So.
And you probably thought Colonel Sanders was from here, because everybody makes that mistake, but he really wasn't.
Yeah, I didn't think about Kentucky very much. Anyway, and then when we got married, and we were dating, and we started coming to Louisville, and I was like, oh my gosh, this town is so cool. And after 10 years in Manhattan, I had kind of realized, like, I don't want to live in New York City. Like, I'm not like a small town boy. I love the big city amenities, but I like knowing what's going on. I like knowing my neighbors. I like feeling part of a tribe. I guess like some level, like a communitarian, whatever, if that's the right word. But you know, you can have such a great community here, and the art scene is so good here, and the parks are so nice, and it's just a great town. There's great old buildings, and you know, so I was kind of the one when my wife got pregnant, I was like, maybe let's move to Louisville, and you know, start the family there. And she's like, really? She's like, I'm not sure I ever thought I would move back. And I was like, it's the coolest city in America. And I'd been auditioning towns, you know, after 10 years in New York City, I was like, maybe I'll move to Austin, maybe I'll move to San Francisco, maybe I'll move to, you know, Portland, Seattle, Atlanta, Chicago. And I lived in a bunch of places.
Right.
Struck me like Louisville struck me.
Yeah. Well, gosh, that's a great advertisement for our city for sure. That's great. So tell me, across all your plethora of activities, what are you currently most excited about?
I mean, you know, Harlan's kind of the rest of my life project. Because one, I can't be there, you know, in Portland, like I could give, you know, I averaged, or I was not anymore, but you know, for the first 8 years in Portland, I was giving like 6 to 10 tours of Portland every week. So I have personally driven like 1,400 people around Portland and showed it to them. Wow. And back in the NuLu days, I would spend 10 to 15 hours a week walking people around East Market Street, saying there'll be a hotel there, there'll be a restaurant there, and people are like, you are out of your mind. You know, anyway, it was, you know, I was like the wild man with crazy ideas, gesticulating and pointing out what could be. Anyway, Harlan, since I'm only there 1 or 2 days a month, it's just going to take me longer to get done what I
lower
want
pace. Yeah.
But maybe once the kids are all in college, I can be up there a little more often. So, but you know,
so how are the folks of Harlan being receptive to you know, a city slicker from Louisville?
Well, you know, since I have the Harlan, you know, the roots, and I'm there a lot, and I'm, you know, working with folks, you know, we're creating jobs, we're doing good stuff. I'm getting Harlan, trying to get good press for Harlan. I work with Harlan Tourism, the county judge exec, the mayor, like the town is really excited about all the possibilities, and they were working on all this stuff before. It's not like me coming in, like I'm just basically enhancing existing efforts, ideas, and you know, sure, I have some perspectives that can be brought to play that can be helpful. And obviously I'm trying to get money invested into the rural areas. And I've even seen people, when they see like, oh, there's somebody who doesn't even live in this town who believes this much in this town and is investing, you know, we've invested over $1 million, and like that makes a big splash in terms of like urban acupuncture. Then people are like, wait a minute, why aren't we fixing up our buildings? Like, well, these are great, you know, or like making folks realize like, oh, that old building that you think should be torn down, actually, maybe that shouldn't be torn down. That facade is 100 years old. That is valuable. You can't rebuild that today. So what you maybe thought was a negative actually can be a positive.
Yeah. That's very cool. Very cool. So what have I not asked you about that you would like to talk about today? Anything I should have asked you about?
No, I am excited that our 2 soccer teams are doing so well, because you know, my friend Wayne Estopanol, I was his second, you know, this is where it's like, you don't have to be a leader. You can also just be a really good follower. And you know, I've been a very good follower to like him, may he rest in peace, and John, you know, I'm trying to support, and I helped, you know, raise some of the money for the soccer, because I really felt like that was going to be a boon for the community. And
that's such a beautiful stadium, and it's, you know, right there when you're driving through Louisville. It's just it just really catches your eye. It's a beautiful,
well, and beautiful that, you know, and the you know, whoever complains like, oh, there was like some cheap, you know, loan from the city and there's some taxpayer on, I'm like, that was a junkyard with 100,000 cars going past every day.
Yeah, so it was terrible looking.
Point, from
Yeah.
Louisville and turned it into the most positive. Like now everybody drives 100,000 people a day drive past and say, oh, Louisville's got something going on. Look at that amazing site,
Yeah.
we
Well,
put
the whole river. I mean, I used to work downtown back when the river was just full of all these, like I said, junkyards and the rock piles and the fuel tanks and all that stuff, for river traffic. And I remember for years people said, "Oh, we'll never be able to fix up our riverfront because of all that bit." And guess what? We have.
yeah,
And
so you got to throw out the big vision, and then it's baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. You got to keep
yeah,
your eye on the prize and keep moving forward. And anyway, so I'm super excited. So sometimes I joke like I mean, I always say things like I'd rather have 1% of Microsoft than 100% of all my businesses on the financial side. But if you want like fun return on community, not just return on investment, but like kind of building together, finding your, every film is its own little family. Every musician has its own fan base, neighborhoods. When we started NuLu Fest, seeing 30,000 people come out for NuLu Fest is so fun.
yeah,
So that's coming up here in 10 days.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully the weather will cooperate.
Yeah, we've had quasi, snow tornadoes, and then we've had beautiful weather. Like you never know. Late September, Kentucky weather, you never know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It should be fun.
Yeah,
Well,
I
Gill,
mean,
thank
the
you
other
so
thing
much.
just to throw out there is like,
Oh,
since you're a business guy, we do have we're like a cauldron, and we can be the alchemy for a lot of startup businesses because we do have inexpensive rent. We are
mhm.
easy to get to logistically. We have a welcoming, kind of as a river city, progressive ideas were always welcome. New people were always welcome. So I feel like the startup scene, we need to keep working on building because
Oh
there's
yeah,
great potential there. So maybe you and I can do that together.
yeah, absolutely. And I like I said, I hang out there, whether it's at Feast or the gosh, it's lost the burger place right next to it. Yeah, I mean,
Grind.
yeah, grind. I mean, I in the microbreweries through there. I mean, it's just such a fun part, and I've got several clients down in that area, so I'm just through there on a regular basis. I love that part of town. If I were going to have an office other than when I'm sitting here in my house, I would. It's probably where it would be.
Yeah, well, I
So
was in Story, Louisville, for a meeting this morning, and that's a
yeah,
great, super cool co-working space.
yeah, I've been in there many times. I've used their space for some training programs I've put on and some stuff like that.
Yeah.
Back, so yeah,
We're also a literary town. You're a writer. You're a published author. So it's like, we have a lot of great literary talent too. A lot of people writing,
oh yeah,
stuff.
yeah. So it's a lot of exciting things. So, well, Gil, thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure. Some great stories. And for those listening who aren't from Louisville, and I know some of my listeners aren't, you just got a great commercial. Why you need to come here and visit us, stop by, see NuLu, see Portland. On your way out of town, swing by Harlan, have a beer at Harlan Beer Company, and man, you got a lot of cool things that people should certainly want to connect and find out about.
Hopefully I can get I bought this 100-year-old hotel building that hadn't been used for like 50 years. It's totally falling down building. So I'm going to do a WeFunder and try to raise a bunch of money and renovate this 100-year-old Harlan hotel. So maybe in 3 or 5 years, you can stay there when you come.
That would be awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you liked it, please share or like it on whatever platform you use. You can find me on social media. On most platforms, I'm John K. Jennings. My first book is also available. Your Baby is Ugly tells you about 10 truths that business owners need to hear, but often won't, and how to overcome them. You can find it on Amazon. Just search for Your Baby is Ugly. And be watching for our next episode where I'll interview another business owner who will share their stories and insights into what it's like to create a great business.